So good morning. Thanks for showing up this early. My name is Mike Jenkins. I work at NSA. I'm the Secure Protocols team lead for the NSA's Center for Cybersecurity Standards. I'm going to be talking today about post-quantum cryptography, but not the cryptography itself, about migration to that cryptography and some of the things we need to start thinking about now rather than later. Just a comment, if you had signed up for this presentation early, you may have noticed a change in presenter. These slides were originally developed by Dr. Alison Becker, and she's a member of my team. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here this week. She is just as passionate about slide production as she is about post-quantum cryptography, which you'll see in the slides. Unfortunately, so you're going to be watching a presentation developed by Tigger and presented by Eeyore. So, nevertheless, I think you'll find this informative. I'm hoping you'll start thinking about the transition to post-quantum cryptography. Hopefully, everyone's seen the conference disclaimer by now. So. And first up, we don't need to worry about post-quantum migration until a quantum computer exists. To start, NSA is primarily concerned with national security systems. That's where our authorities lie. There are different authorities throughout the U.S. government. NIST has authorities for a good portion of the rest of U.S. government that is not national security systems, and is a huge influence on industry, and authoritative for certain parts of industry. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is relevant to national security systems, but the lessons are similar. They might extend out a little bit. NSM 10, National Security Memorandum 10, lays out the requirements for the government to move to post-quantum cryptography. And it says we need to move, and we need to, specifically, we need to move to the commercial national standard algorithm suite of algorithms by 2035. That's very aggressive, but the line has been drawn for us. Transitions are hard. Security transitions are especially hard. So we need to start now to meet that deadline. Commercial industry may make other risk assessments, but the clock is really ticking. So there's a lot of near-term tasks that are required to make this transition. You have to inventory your devices. You need to find where the vulnerable cryptography is, what needs to be replaced, what needs to be updated, and then build and execute a transition plan, and then do testing of the implementations. So agencies and companies, could take a more reactive role, but should take a more active role in planning and updating in planning and updating their systems. One of these ways that is near and dear to my heart as working for the Center for Cybersecurity Standards is working in standards, and I'll get to more of that later. Quantum cryptography affects encryption or key agreement and authentication in different ways. So starting with encryption, there's a common way of understanding, of talking about the need to plan for changes to post-quantum encryption. If you take the time the data needs to be secure, which is the X, plus the time to that it'll take to transition your systems, the Y, if that ends up being greater than the time it takes to develop a cryptographically relevant quantum computer, one that could actually make a difference in breaking cryptographic algorithms, then you can be in trouble. You could be in catastrophic trouble. So there is disagreement on when a cryptographically relevant quantum computer will come about. Two things that aren't really in disagreement, though, is that it's if, not when, and that you won't know. You won't be told. Neither will I. Someone will develop it and make use of it, and that will could be catastrophic. So now is the time to start paying attention. I keep pressing the wrong button here. Oh. So for national security systems, the X, the data life, it's complicated by the fact that adversaries may collect data on the wire, store it away, and decrypt it at a later date. This is primarily a concern for nation states, because nation states are the ones who are going to have the power and the access and the storage to be able to do this. But it is an issue. And it can be an issue also for critical infrastructure. It can be an issue for prominent businesses, businesses that do business with the government or that have a global reach. So transitioning quickly to quantum-resistant algorithms reduces the risk of attack, and it improves the hygiene of the entire community, the cryptographic community. Authentication is a little different. Online protocol authentication is generally transient. You authenticate your session and then it lasts for the session. So you don't have the long-lived, there's no point in harvesting anything. You don't have to worry about that. Object signing is a little different. Software can be signed. Identity certificates get signed. So those you have to concern yourself. They don't live forever, and there's no point they expire. So there's no point in harvesting them. But they are a little longer lived. So we tend to think, well, we need to do encryption now, and we can wait a little while for authentication. But again, algorithm transition is hard, and it takes time. As an example, the SHA-1 was standardized in 1995, and SHA-2 was standardized. The follow-on was standardized in 2001. Weaknesses were discovered in SHA-1 in 2005. But browsers were accepting SHA-1 up until 2017. And it took a concerted effort by the browsers to sort of shame everybody into moving off of SHA-1. There's a reticence to sort of moving on. It's expensive. It involves replacing a lot of things globally. It can be very disruptive. And so transitions are very hard. Even small changes in online protocols can cause performance, especially when you're talking about browsers and the web, can cause performance hang-ups that businesses don't like. So they want to keep everything as stable as possible, and that throws a wrench into transitions as well. So we need to start planning for authentication transition, even if we're going to do it after. encryption transition. One area that is not that way is software signing, firmware signing. What I call the singularity, if it became known that a quantum-resistant computer had been developed, at that point, everything is vulnerable that's public key. Everything that's symmetric key is somewhat weakened. And at that moment, we would need to quickly roll out to recover. And having the data integrity and source authentication for software distribution would be critical, and that's where software signing comes in. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, how that can be addressed. But that has to happen now. That transition needs to happen as quickly as possible. So I'm supposed to say busted here. There you go. So we need to start planning our transitions now. Government and related industry sectors, high value and high risk sectors, and network fabric, which is often the last place that gets transitioned. They tend to lag. They're kind of in the weeds. They're buried, but they're just as vulnerable. And as we'll see later, there are aspects to this transition that's going to hit them hard, not because they're vulnerable, but because this is not the same. This is not like we're making things easier and smaller. This is very different. So I'll get to that in a bit, but they are going to be very affected. So next up, here we go. Yes, this transition is the same as all other algorithm transitions. And if you have read anything about the post-quantum algorithms, then it becomes obvious very quickly that this isn't the same. The structures of traditional and post-quantum algorithms are different. The differences require an adversary The differences require advanced work to adapt to the post-quantum cryptographic algorithms. Displacing a traditional algorithm with a post-quantum algorithm with its post-quantum counterpart is often not an option. Some of them look similar, but there are differences under the hood. And not only for the algorithms themselves, but the new algorithms have to fit into protocols. They have to be matched up with the protocols where they get used, and the result needs to be evaluated to ensure that all of the security properties you got from the protocol before are still true with the new type of protocol. So as an example, a common key transport that's used every day directly encrypts data. And that data is often the symmetric key that's used to actually encrypt messages or things you care about. And then the result is sent to a recipient who applies a private key directly to the data that's been sent to decrypt it and to use it. When NIST started their post-quantum crypto program, they requested what's called key encapsulation mechanisms. They did this for a reason. It made it complicated, but they did this for a reason. It helps them achieve provable properties of the algorithms, and it specifically helps them avoid some problems that arose with algorithms with currently used algorithms, certain padding issues and that sort of thing. They just kind of go away with key encapsulation mechanisms. Sometimes key encapsulation mechanisms work superficially the same, but the private and public keys get used differently. So those libraries all need to be replaced. And the interfaces are somewhat different. You don't supply the same things to the library, or in the same way. For others, like Diffie-Hellman, if you're familiar with that, key encapsulation mechanisms work very differently. They can't easily be made to do this. They can be sort of, if you look at them in the right light, you can make them do something like a Diffie-Hellman, but they're definitely not drop-in replacements. You do need to do some work. In addition, many of the characteristics of post-quantum cryptography are different. Sometimes the performance improves, sometimes dramatically. But in some cases it gets worse. And in nearly all cases, the sizes of things, the sizes of keys and the sizes of the sizes of keys that you're going to transmit, particularly, and the sizes and in some cases the performance gets worse. So as an example, and these are sort of the lowest security. So these are going to be the smallest keys and the least time, right? It gets worse after this, and of course, for the commercial national security algorithm suite, we selected level 5. So this is the best case almost. It gets more complicated as you go up. But for Kyber 512, the key size is, the private key size is much larger. And the public key size, the one you would be sending, is nearly 3 times larger than comparable security of a traditional algorithm. And of course it gets worse at higher levels. The smallest dilithium, which is the signature algorithm, the dilithium 2, the smallest one that would be considered, the signature is 38 times larger, almost 38 times larger, than the comparably secure ECC, elliptic curve signature. So especially, this is especially concerning for protocols like IPsec. IPsec travels over a transport called UDP, which doesn't have inherent fragmentation management, which means you can't take these large things and split them up and send them, and then the other side just kind of magically puts them back together in the order they're supposed to be in. Heretofore, transitions have made things smaller, and they fit more, better into these packets. This is going to completely change that, and so you have protocols that need to be altered or extended, or in some cases, I don't think we've hit any of these yet, but we're beginning to be concerned about it. They'll have to be reimagined. You'll have to go to a whole new version of a protocol just to accommodate adequate post-quantum cryptographic parameters. Most of this work is happening in standards organizations. This is why NSA is actually in a lot of these standards organizations to make sure that not only that good security is being put into these standards, but that the kinds of parameters that we're interested in are going to be accommodated by those standards. Here's another example. Dilithium 2 is over 3 times faster to verify but it's 2.5 times slower to sign. This comes into play when you have time-sensitive protocols that have timeouts. If it's taking you a long time to sign, you may be dropping all your connections just because it takes too long. And it is in milliseconds, but that matters. So it's not only the key and signature sizes, it's other characteristics. And this can be especially bad for protocols like DNSSEC, which also use UDP. But if you're going to put any kind of authentication over your DNS, over your sort of the internet phone book type of application, then you're going to be concerned if your signature times go way up. So we covered differences in structure and function and characteristics, and these are going to prevent drop-in replacement. Next up is, what? Go back. Yes, they're going to do this to me every single time. But we're having fun. We're having fun here on a Wednesday morning. So, next up, symmetric algorithms don't need to be upgraded. So this is a tricky one. And so I'd like you to look at this slide. And Dr. Becker would have had something really, really good to say about this. But what I've got to say about it. So there's something called Shor's algorithm, and this gets a lot of the limelight. The NIST PQ crypto program was very focused on public key algorithms. Shor's algorithm says that for a quantum computer of a specific quality, not just a number of qubits, but a specific quality that you don't get things falling apart over time, that public key cryptography is catastrophically busted. There's another one called Grover's algorithm, and it relates to brute force attacks on the key space of symmetric ciphers. It also applies to one-way functions like hashes. And basically it says that you can get up to a 2 times speed up in the brute force attack over the key space of a symmetric cipher. So that's not as bad. That's not catastrophic. But the standard for internet security at the moment is like 128 bits. If you have that to 64 bits, that gets in the realm of being able to be, broken like now. So the recommendation is, you don't actually have to double, but the recommendation is to double, to go to AES 256, which is widely available, which is accelerated on hardware. So that it really should be a no-brainer to do this. I mean, we can do this right now. The NSA recommends it NSA requires it for national security systems and recommends it anyway, even now. That could, though, depending on what your systems do now, and what your interdependencies between businesses, that could need planning. So that should be looked at. Okay. Moving on. So next up is that we can use PQ algorithms now. Why do we need a plan? Why don't we just get this done, right? And some cases we can actually. So NIST is in the process of standardizing a lot of new post-quantum algorithms, and they're actually looking into more of them that have different characteristics that are based on different hard problems. But what they have done in a document called 800-208 is they have already standardized 2 hash-based signature algorithms. And the security is based on hash functions, on SHA or SHA. So we're already very confident. Hash functions have been well studied, they are well understood. The security properties of them are well understood. And so they are understood to be quantum resistant. Modulo, the Scrover's algorithm, using a little bigger hash length. And they are already being mentioned in standards. These standards actually, these algorithms were actually standardized in the IETF first, and this kind of wisely said, well, since industry already has identified things that they can use, we'll standardize on that. So why don't we use this everywhere? Why aren't we done? Actually, there's something called state, which makes these tricky to use. You can't use the same signature twice, or the scheme fails catastrophically. So we tend to want to use this in areas where the signer is under high control. Fortunately, this applies to the one thing that we need for recovery, the one thing that we need to actually do now, which is firmware and software signing. So, so in the Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite, we call out hash-based signatures, LMS and XMSS, for signing software delivery. So we can do that now. Other than that, we are waiting on NIST, and that's been a mantra in the cryptographic community. That's been a mantra in the standards development community for a while. NIST has promised that we will have drafts sometime this summer for the algorithms they've selected, for the asymmetric algorithms they've selected. We need to wait for them to publish these algorithms because they are going to be very careful to choose parameters that are secure, but that work, that work for typical internet applications. That's always a trade-off and has to be made very carefully. So they're taking their time and getting that right. Standards organizations are really chomping at the bit to get at these algorithms and get them in. They want to move forward, of course. In some cases, there's money to be made, so that's always a motivator. But they're very excited about this. So they are moving forward. They're looking at how the standards use these, are going to use these algorithms, what changes they have to make to the protocols. They are, in some cases, looking at different ways of using the protocols, in the algorithms in combinations. They are looking at identifiers and what makes sense. So they are moving forward. It's kind of an exciting time in standards if you're inclined to be active in that role. So this is partially busted. And then finally, there's already a plan in place for how to transition to tech to PQC. The government will think up something. We're always here to help. Or there are industry consortia that are I don't go too far with it, but yeah, I'll do it. I'll go there. They're an industry consortia. They're going to take care of all this, and you're going to wake up one day and say, "Oh, here's how this works. Here's how this works." That's not quite true. There isn't really any one-size-fits-all plan. Is the problem? There are commonalities in the problem, but in the solutions, you really need to look at what makes sense for you. You need to do your own risk assessment. You need to do your own inventory of your devices and look at your own commercial dependencies, who you talk to, how fast they are transitioning, and so forth. There's a number of things that you should be doing. You should be looking for tools that are going to help you do the discovery and do the inventorying. And looking for advice, looking for trusted sources of advice for how to go about this, what to look out for, what mistakes not to make. For national security systems, NSM-10, as I said, it defines activities and authorities to carry this out. So for high assurance, organizations like NSA and DISA are already working on inventorying the cryptographic portfolio of devices and where they are and how that's going to roll out. For commercial industry, it's a little different. The NIST NCCOE post-quantum cryptography migration project is running. And this is amazing. So what they've done is they've created this grouping of companies that build tools to do these things and companies that run like cloud services that use these things. And they are going to create a platform that shows how these things can work together to make this happen, to help plan, and also to help execute the transition. And so they've got a couple of work streams already going. They've got a discovery work stream. They've got a performance and interoperability work stream going. There's actually an introductory, basically an introductory to what they've done already and what they plan to do with this project. There's a document out, it's Special Pub 1800-38A, and they are looking for comment. So beyond that, after inventory and discovery, it's time to develop a timeline and a plan for the transition. You need to look at the sensitivity of your particular data. You need to look at your device lifespans. You don't want to replace everything. You don't want to replace everything right away. But you might want to accelerate certain aspects, certain things where cryptography is embedded and you can't update it. You want to look at your external interoperability, your dependencies on external entities, how fast they are going, what risk assessments they've made, and maybe work together to make sure that both ends are risk needs are met. Beyond that, you need to prioritize. Definitely pay more attention at the moment to encryption. That's especially true for government, but it's true in general. Authentication in most cases, setting aside software distribution, authentication in most cases can wait a bit. High value and high risk data. Look at where your high risk data is and make sure that is gets attention first. Protocol updates are another thing. I mean, A lot of the emphasis is on replacing the algorithms, but you need to pay attention to the changes in the protocols and the libraries. These aren't always obvious. I mean, if you're filling out your timesheet, you got TLS running in the background. You don't know that. You're just not supposed to know that. But within your IT portion of your organization, they need to know about that. There are versions of, for instance, TLS that are still in the field that can't accommodate this. They're not being worked on. In fact, they're being deprecated, but they're still there. You need to be aware that the really most of the work in post-quantum cryptography is taking place in TLS 1.3, the latest version. Even 1.2 really isn't being worked on anymore. So you need to pay attention to that in addition to replacing the algorithms. But your plan will be unique, and you need to think about your drivers and the tools that are helpful to you. And working for a standards group, I need to make a plug for getting involved. You don't have to be a consumer of this. You don't have to stand around and wait for this to happen to you. You can get involved if you attend standards meetings, and you can participate on mail lists. Some of them are easier to do than others. Some of them you would do through a consortium or through your government. But your expertise is always welcome. Your experiences are welcome and needed in these groups. You have some groups that are highly academic, or some groups that are where you have folks that have been developing things for years, but they don't have up-to-date knowledge on what's happening now. So it would really help if folks would get involved in the updating of these standards, and they would welcome that. They know where their gaps are, and they would welcome. So groups like the IETF, the IEEE, you can contact NIST. Their PQC migration project has a website. You can contact them. There are lots of ways to get involved. And finally, thank you. So we've had a bit of fun. Some people have had a bit of fun busting these myths. So the takeaways are, of course, and I've kind of been harping on them, but plan now and get involved. The problem is common, but the solutions are unique. Preparedness will make the difference. It'll make for a smoother transition. I'd like to point out that my colleague, Dr. Morgan Stern, will be talking about the Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite 2.0 at a booth talk at the NSA booth. That's 549. I think it's down on the South Expo floor at 10 o'clock. So that's immediately, more or less immediately following this. And is Bill in the audience? I don't see him. So I know Bill Newhouse is here from the NCCOE, and that's running the PQC migration project. So if you see somebody with a tag that says Bill Newhouse, you can talk to him about that. Anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for coming out so early, and enjoy the rest of your conference. Oh, sure.
So I'm in the slide talked about the time or the device lifetime. In my industry, it's 10, 20, sometimes 30 years. And next few years, we have autonomous systems coming out and connected vehicles. Is there any hope for us?
So it depends on whether they're upgradable or not. And then as I say, we work with the satellite community that has a very similar problem. Is there any hope? So the hope at the moment is that nobody really knows when this is going to happen. So in general, the answer, being you, or my gut reaction is no, but no. Is just to start now, just to hit the ground running, right, and get going. That's what we've been telling the satellite community, and they have really taken it to heart. And if things are upgradable, particularly if the upgrade function is upgradable, that makes a big difference. If that's not happening, but you can upgrade to your operational protocols and algorithms, start thinking about that now. Keep abreast of what NIST is doing with the algorithms. That's really all I can say to that. Yeah.
How you doing? I'm a software developer in the operating system area, and so, we have to provide algorithms to fit our customers' needs, usually driven by auditors. Do you expect TLS 1.3 to be able to accommodate post-quantum algorithms, or do you kind of foresee a refresh, like another version?
I don't think there will be. I think 1.4 or 3.0 is probably in work. I mean, they're not announcing that, but I know the people working on it, and that I know they have ideas. But I don't think that they are doing anything that would be needed to accommodate post-quantum algorithms. I think we kind of got in early enough with the word in the air that they kind of there were some fields that were sort of bound, and we said you need to make those a little bigger. So they're well aware. I don't think there's any problem with TLS 1.3.
Okay. Second question, if I may. Perhaps a sixth myth. So I've been attending these since 2018, and every year the cryptographers panel talks about how the reality of this is still 30 years out.
Yes.
So
Perpetually 30 years out.
Yes, perpetually 30 years out. So how do you respond to that? Yeah.
Feel free to come down.
Yeah.
But I'm generally more the quantum guy, so I'm happy to prognosticate at some later date.
Right. So to be clear, so Morgan is a crypt mathematician, and I'm an engineer. So I do sort of I take the algorithms as a given and say, okay, how am I going to move to these, right? So yeah, that's a question more for Morgan. And I've seen his presentation; it's good. So come down to the booth.
It's a little tall. So obviously with these PQC algorithms, there's always the worry that they're going to be hacked at some point in the future, like what happened with Psych. So I'm curious what NSA and NIST are thinking about with more like mathematically provably secure solutions, like one-time keypads, and not just QKD either, but just how are you thinking about some emerging technologies like that?
So I can't speak to that from an NSA point of view because I don't work in that area. I don't know if that's going to be covered at Morgan's talk or not, or whether he has any insight on that. I think from this, right? That's a great question for him. I think from this point of view, they are laser focused on business applications and making this, again, these can't be drop-in replacements, but they are looking for the easiest path to migration. So they're not looking for new things. I mean, I'm sure they have people looking at new things, but I think in this particular regard, they're looking for the quickest, not easiest, but most straightforward path to migrate. And so I think the kinds of things you're talking about are going along as they ever would have. Does that help?
Yes, thanks.
So my
question is kind of follow-up on the quantum key distribution solutions and all. So do you still see a relevance once we have NIST approved algorithms implemented? What would be the role of this QKD hardware, and or is it just like in the short term or medium term thing, and eventually no one's going to look at them? Or what are your thoughts on the whole quantum key distribution solutions around?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the question part.
The QKD devices, the quantum key distribution solutions we have around, do you still see a relevance once we have PQC algorithms implemented? Or do you see them coexisting? Or do you see QKD related stuff not relevant once we have everyone implementing these?
Okay. So as a non-mathematician, non-physicist, I kind of consume what NSA's advice on this, and we have no interest in QKD. So I mean, we're not, like, I'm sure we have some people looking at it. Everybody's kind of looking at it. We don't see it as being efficient enough and relevant, frankly. We're not getting in the way of it. If it exists, okay.
Okay, I'm in firmware development area, and I'm wondering what's the recommended digital signature for firmware. I mean, when we transition to PQC.
What's the
recommended digital signature algorithm? I mean, there is, the lithium can be the digital, signature using PQC, right? So is that the only one solution for firmware signature?
So NIST actually selected 3 signatures. I may not be telling you anything you don't know. So they selected dilithium, Falcon, and Sphinx Plus. Sphinx Plus is hash-based, but it has a sort of randomized selection function that makes it not quite as well known as like LMS or XMSS. So there are options. NIST is also looking, I think, primarily for more chems, but NIST is also looking, has a 4th round coming, that they want people to do research on different mathematically hard problems, something more of the code base and more of the other types of non-lattice based, right? So for national security systems, which is what NSA has purview for, we have the Commercial National Security Algorithm Suite. And so that's what we will be rolling forward with. And for that, we have profiled, down selected for what NIST recommended to Kyber level 5 and dilithium level 5. So for NSS, that's the answer, sort of by regulation. From a commercial point of view, you'd have to look at the characteristics of the signatures and find out what worked best.
Okay, maybe the last question. Whenever the U.S. government only accept the FIPS validated product, right?
Say it again?
The FIPS 148. Yeah. FIPS. F-I-P-S.
Yeah.
Yeah. So usually the crypto algorithm validation program provides some, certification process, but I don't see any, movement for that, CAVP or CMVP program to accept the PQC algorithm.
So again, they're not standardized yet. So that's in the works. I know that they have either rolled out or are soon to roll out for hash-based signatures. It's there already. So they can do that for hash-based signatures, which they already have a standard for. For the other ones, the draft is due this summer. So I think once the parameters are nailed down, they're going to be doing that very quickly. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
It's a good question. Thank you for the question, and thank you for coming.